We are now recording. All right. Hello, Chris. How are you today?
Hey, with me. Great. I'm great. I'm great.
Where are you in the world?
I am in Colombia right now. I am in
In
Medellin.
Medellin. So I met Chris in Medellin last year in 2024 on the dance floor, salsa dancing. Um, and we had a conversation, and he invited me to volunteer in Ocho de Marzo, which is a predominantly Black community in Medellin, Colombia, which we'll get into later. Um, but Chris, introduce yourself to our audience.
Great. My name is Chris Anne Koulibaly. Usually, I use my two surnames because it's important for me to recognize the fact that I have something from my father and also from my mother. I am 30 years old, and I'm, as I was saying, yeah, currently living in Medellin, in Colombia.
So, where are you from, Chris?
This is this is a great question. In fact, uh, I think that is kind of the toughest question that I have to answer to, and the thing is that I have to answer it every day. Um, I am from Mali and Senegal in West Africa, and I'm also from France because I was born there. And when I'm talking about those countries, it's important for me to highlight that I'm not talking about concepts, because most of the time we see those countries as like eternal things. But for example, my mother, she was born in Fr- um, how do you call it, French Occidental Africa, you know,
Mhm.
and today it's a country that doesn't exist anymore. So today, when we say that she was born in Senegal, this is where she is from. But the thing is that, well, when I'm talking about those places, I'm talking most of all about those concrete places, the people, the communities, the food, the experiences that I've lived, the type of connection that you have with the people, the language, and really most more than the concept and those countries, I am from those experiences.
Yes. So, let's get into that because you are not the first person that I'll talk to that has a complex identity when it comes to having immigrant families. What was it like growing up in France? What city did you grow up in? How did you identify yourself? And what was that experience like?
Um, the thing is that I was raised in different places, not only in France but also
Okay.
in different countries in Africa. So, in fact, when I was in Africa, in Kenya, as early as my memories are, it was in Kenya, in Nairobi. I remember that I was just focusing on growing up, and on being on happiness. I was carefree. I would not think much about things. But then when I went back to France, I was 10 years old when I went back to France. I started to feel kind of uncomfortable with some things.
What were
Um,
those things?
the thing is that when I was in Africa, I would just see myself as a human being. And when I went back to France, I would see that people would see me as a black man. So this was something kind of difficult for me because I haven't experienced it before, and it would go through like insidious racism, those kind of questions or of things like, you're not like the other black people,
Mm,
or I am supposed to have some kind of connections of some kinds of preferences as a black man, and these are things that I was not, you know, used to. So I started to, because of my personality, I started to be oriented to a certain kind of activities in my life,
What
and
kind
it's
of
later
activities were those?
sports, dancing, being kind to people. I always had to do kind of twice as much, or yeah,
Work
I think
twice
that
as
was
hard to get half as much. Yes, that is.
I think that the thing that is difficult with this is that when you do twice as much is also that you um, yeah you it's kind of um, you deserve it's kind of it's kind of you deserve twice as less, you know think that you deserve twice as less. So it was something that was kind of difficult for me. But I've had my experience in France, in different cities in France. I was first of all in the suburbs of Paris, and
Okay.
then in the country, where I was the kind of the only black man in the village. So also I was seen as the kind of mascot. When I started to play football, I was the only one who was able to do some dancing moves and all this stuff. So you know, this started to build myself in a different way. And I went back to Africa. And when I finally went to Latin America, my experience was very, very different.
Yeah. So let's quickly touch on the childhood more because I want to elaborate and
Okay.
kind of paint a picture. You say you spent your more formative years in Kenya where you could just be, and then you get to France. And do you remember one of your first, like, most triggering experiences that you maybe carry with you still today or that you think back to?
I think that several of them. Um, for example, I remember that my father was really, rigorous on this thing that you have to do twice as much as the other people, because he wanted us to be recognized also, that we as black people be recognized as black people. My father is from Mali. He was born there, and when he was 18, or I don't remember, 20, between 18 and 20, he decided to go to France, and it's in France that he met my mother. So I remember that this was something quite um, striking to me, to hear my father talking about doing twice as much, and you have to work, and this is our fundamental value, working. It was this all the time. And I know that he had this opportunity also to grow, to um, uplift, to go through the social ladder. I don't know if I'm making myself here
Yes. Yes.
understood. And for him, it has been something that was very, very important. And for example, my fathers, they would speak Bambara between themselves. That is the language of my people. But with us, they would speak only French, because it was very important for them that we had a good French, and that it the fact that we had a good French would not handicap us through life. So this was something that I remember that struck me when I was a kid. I would not understand why I had to do the same as him, because in fact I was in France, and I was born in France, and I was expecting to be recognized as a French. So when
Mhm.
I finally understood that people would see me as a black people. And this was, I think, when I was in the country, in this small village of 9,000 of inhabitants. I would really see at this moment that people were very kind to me. Not I won't lie, but it's after in my life that I realized that really they would took me most of the time also as a kind of mascot.
Yeah.
And this was something that struck me. For example, I remember that one while the first day that I started to play football, I was with my friends. I had no experience.
Football. Sorry to cut you off, but
Soccer.
most of my listenings are gonna be American. So by football we mean soccer, right?
Exactly, soccer.
But
Sorry.
football. But no. It's still football. But I
Mhm.
just want to clarify.
Yeah. Yeah, the first time that I started to play soccer, um, I did not have any experience playing soccer, and but they would assume that I had like capabilities, inherent capabilities. So they told me, you're black, you're big, you have your muscles, so you're gonna be in the defense. This is where you're going to frighten people, and they won't be able to score. So this was the kind of things that at this time I would accept, because it would put me in a position that I would think that was privileged, a privileged position. And then I realized that it was yeah, a bit different.
Yeah.
A bit different,
It
yes.
it sounds like unfortunately, but the typical story, especially of black men playing defense and being able to, especially in your formative years when you probably just want to be cool and be popular and have the least amount of stress, of high school stress,
Right.
right? And it's just interesting though, because I hear a lot of these stories in the context of America, but to know that literally all around this world, as Black people, we have these very similar stories when it comes to integrating in what may be the majority community
Hmm.
outside of Africa, right?
Yes.
And so, in parts of Africa, because we all know that in some parts of Africa, there's still some very similar experiences, especially if we think South Africa. But so that was your high school years, and then you say you go back to Africa. What country did you go back to? How old were you at this point?
So at the age of 16, I went to an island that is called Madagascar.
For those
Yeah,
that didn't know, more here in Vietnam, is Nigerian, but grew up in
uh-huh. Yeah, and it was also very impressive, because Madagascar, it's an island that is made of people who have roots from Africa and also from Asia, especially from Indonesia. And yeah, you can see that although those people have a specific, um, yeah, in fact, color, they have shapes that are very different. When you see someone from Madagascar, it's not very difficult uh, to know that it's from that this person is from Madagascar. And um, yeah, although they have like some specificities, they were considered as black, you know.
Africa.
And this experience, well, so when I went there and when I lived there, it was easier for me to also once again to be, without thinking about my color or the race I was supposed to be part of. So it was something different, but something that was also like striking to me is that even if in Madagascar you have like different people, people from the north, people from the south, from the east, from the west, and you have the same dynamics of oppression that you can find in other countries. For example, and this was something that also struck me, because the one who are sorry about that,
No problem.
the one who are considered as black are people who are like really black, let's say it like this, are the one from the coast, and the other one are considered as whiter or less black, let's say like this, than the others. And this is also because of the colonization, the type of colonization, sorry, that France carried out there. The idea was to divide to reign better. So they had to establish a kind of hierarchy between the different populations, and this hierarchy, sorry, was also based on the race. And today it also has a lot of consequences. you can see that the same model that you can see in European or also American countries
Mhm.
is the same that you're going to see in Madagascar.
Wow. Wow. It reminds me of, like, we joke about this now a little bit in the Black community in America, but we'll be like, "Oh, I was in the house," or "You was in the field," based on
Mhm.
skin color, because that still was deeply, that hierarchy struggle. I mean, structure was also embedded in, I would say, all over the world at this point, right? Even you think about in South Africa, they're called colored versus black versus white. Like there's always a distinguishing factor, especially to um, signify your proximity to whiteness.
Exactly.
But it's interesting to hear that in an African country, even though it may have its own unique history, I think one thing to point out here, which I honestly didn't know until I started traveling, that colonization wasn't just in the Americas. Like these Europeans literally went all over the world.
Exactly. No,
In
yeah,
Vietnam, where I am right now, they were colonized by the French,
exactly.
as well. Other places, and I'm like, wow, they really did a number on the world, not just places where slaves were known to be, which sometimes now I question, why are Black people the only group of people with the lasting impression of slavery as our story, and
Mm.
other groups aren't, when they too were enslaved or brought over? Like when I was in Malaysia, so Malaysia is a very interesting melting pot of different Asian descent of people. Like you
Okay.
have Indian Malays, Chinese Malay, other regions of Asia, Malay, like the same thing as I would consider myself African American. Like they're great. Maybe they're able to like pinpoint that it was their great grandparents, but the story is they were brought over for work. And I'm like, is that the story? Or is that a better narrative than calling your people slaves that we have held on to as Black people around, I will say in America for sure. I'll maybe ask you when we get to the Latin American portion of like, how has your interaction with Black people in the different parts of Latin America been, and do they hold that identity of enslavement? Because I've heard different stories, but you've
Mm.
lived there. Um, so you're in Madagascar, and then you studied university in France,
In
right?
France, exactly. So after Madagascar, I spent 2 years in the island, and then I went back to France. And I think that it is at this moment when I started to study at the university that I started to feel this. Uh, I wasn't very comfortable, because the more I went through my studies, the less black people I would see, in the yeah in the, in the different spaces, and I think that at the moment when I went to the university, I was in Bordeaux. This is where I started to realize that really this wasn't my place. I mean, the things that people would do, the way that they would connect, the way that they would, party, the way there was a
Paint
lot
the
of
picture
things.
for us. What were some of those things of how they would act, how they would dress, how they would
mm,
party?
the way that they would drink, for example, the way that they would. The thing is that they were really privileged persons, you
Mm,
know, and privileged persons that I've seen, in African context are very different than privileged persons that I've seen like in this context in particular,
what
because uh, because I think that in the African context, people, it's a perception that I have. They know that they come from something. I mean, it's not something that has been uh, taken for granted. because those people that I've seen in France, I think that one thing that was specific is the fact that most of their families have herited from those privilege for a long time, and for them they could not lose it. So if you can't lose your privilege, you can do anything you want because you know that you can't lose it.
Yeah.
And in other contexts, people who have been able to meet in African contexts that were privileged would know that if you make the wrong move,
This can be gone.
oh, you go back very, very far. So this is something that I think I've been able to see, and it's also out there that I started to see what kind of word those kind of privileged person want to create. It's a word really in which they don't give a damn about a lot of things. They make noise everywhere they go, and they sell drugs for fun, and they drink until they cannot for fun. And we had experiences of rape and all this kind of things in a business school, and I would see this and just think, I think that this is really not my place,
Yeah.
really. Um, so when I had the opportunity, really, I took like uh, with my studies, I had the possibility to go to make an exchange in
Mhm.
any country. It could be in Africa, in Europe, and I took the country that was the farthest from where I was. And this was
And you went to
Chile. Chile. Yeah, as a well, I'm used to say this, but people who are going to Chile, or at the beginning who are going to Chile, they have to go through the desert, at the north of the country,
yeah.
or the Cordillera, that is that is the chain of mountains, at the
Okay. Yes.
oriental part, or you have to go through the Pacific or the Antarctic at the south. So if you want to go to Chile, really is that you want to go there because the
The
yeah.
passage is not easy.
Exactly. So, and themselves, they call the country like the back of the world. This is how they call even the thing. So I had the opportunity to go very far from where I was, and I went to Chile. And
So now we're in Latin America. At
exactly,
this time, are you speaking Spanish
I was
already?
a bit of Spanish because this something to when I was at school. One thing that was important for me was to be really focused on what I was learning, and I had classes of Spanish, and I went well with them. But when I arrived there, when you go to Chile, it's very difficult to understand Chilean because in fact
Mhm.
it's more Chilean than Spanish, because
Okay.
they have a lot of words that are just for themselves, their accents. It's
I,
it's it's kind of difficult.
I feel that's what people say when they come to Louisiana about us.
Okay.
Because I don't have it as much anymore, but especially in New Orleans, they have their own. Like,
Wow.
baby, what you doing over there, child? Like, it's like a very, because it's also like influences of France on the
I
English,
understand.
so it's very sing-songy and deep. So like, that's what I'm picturing. Like, it's Spanish, but it's their own thing and their own sayings. So what was your experience like in Chile? And then also, is there a black population in Chile?
There is a small black population in Chile that is very marginalized, really. And well, when I arrived there, um, yes, I had to face the fact that I was black. This was sure because you know I was in when I was in between France and between other countries like in Africa and Kenya or in Madagascar. When people would ask me where I was from, I would always have this way to say I'm a little bit I'm a little bit from here. You know, in
Mm.
Chile, I had no chance to say to people I am a little bit from here. You know, I had nothing to do with them, and they would know it. And in fact, when they would ask me, "Where are you from?" the insidious question that was
What's
behind is,
Africa?
yeah, what countries? Even more than that, they were asking me, "What are you doing here?" You're not from here, and they made me very. It was very clear for them that I wasn't from there. You know, so I had to ask myself, because when I would answer this question, "Where are you from?" Um, the thing is that people, when they ask you this, they try to anchor themselves to something that they might or not know, and it has good and bad ways. But most of the times it comes with stereotypes. So when I would say, for example, I'm from France, the first thing, the Champs-Élysées, oh, la Tour Eiffel, oh, all those things that in fact was not part of my experience in France.
Mm,
So at this moment, I tried to change, because all the conversations would go, you know, through this thing that wasn't mine. The food in France, and when I was a little boy, what I would eat was mafé and chepujen and poulet yassa, and these are things that
croissants and baguettes on.
the cafe or from no, this was not part of my childhood. So I would adjust the answer, and then I would start to say that I'm from Senegal and Mali, and people would not know, and they would start to ask things like, "Oh, but in Africa, people are very poor, right?" And in Africa, things that would always bring me to something that is not part of the experience that I had. So I started to adjust, and to me, it was more interesting to speak about this African identity that I had than to speak about France, the French one, because the French one was imposed, in fact, in a certain way to me during my whole childhood. When I was in at school, they would talk to me about France. When I was in at the university, they would talk to me about France, the greatness of France, and the history of France, and all this stuff. So, and from Africa, the only things that I would know were things from my parents, the things I would live, and also, well, the places where I've lived. But I mean, like the theoretical part that people are usually know, it's not something that you learn at school and that people talk to you about. The way that you hear about Africa is through the social media or the media, and most of the time, the image that you have of Africa is not the best one, you know. So it was more interesting for me to speak about Africa and my roots in Mali and Senegal, so that people know a little bit more about this, and that they start to be uh, like that, be less ignorant in a certain way about those countries. Most of them have had never heard about Mali or Senegal, and it occurs to me today also. So
Yeah,
it was a way for me to speak about those things. And at this moment, I also realized that um, there are some things that I had also to learn about my own experience as a Malian, as a Bambara. In fact.
yeah. So, a few things I want to touch on, especially the where are you from piece, because I so August was my first time coming to Asia, right?
Okay.
And mostly I had traveled Europe or little bits of Africa, and I had that long stint in Colombia. Never was my Americanness challenged, right? In Europe, there's enough Americans that travel there, and I think our history may be a little more known that there are Black Americans. So it's like, oh, you're from the States. What state? Here in Asia, it's, oh, you're American, really? No, where are your grandparents from? And
Mm.
I'm like, and it was the first time that it really hit me that, well, maybe not the first, but in a way that I don't have an identity back to Africa. Like, yes, I am Black, but I can't tell you directly unless I go and do a 23andMe or some form of a DNA test to maybe hypothetically get some answer of what country in Africa I'm from. America is the only place I've known. It's the only place that my grandparents, great grandparents, great grandparents has known. And to your point, people want to put you in a box. They want to stereotype you. But I also have never shown any form of empathy or consideration for immigrant kids, right? Where it's like that is a very, because for me, even if I'm asked, I have nothing else attached to it. Like I don't have another story to tell. Like the complexities start with there was a slave trade. And if you want to talk about that, let's do it. 9 times out of 10 you don't. So you're gonna let my answer like of America slide. But then when you have a country where your family is from, you are still proud of that, or everyone may have a different feeling of how they feel about their parents and where they immigrated from and how they chose to raise them. Like you mentioned earlier, they only spoke to us in French, right? Like why they did what they did, why they choose to leave their home country. And there's a lot of people struggling with the war from question. I just want to like acknowledge that I really love the fact that you said, "Hey, this is my purpose. I am gonna make this a purposeful effort of showing light and changing the narrative, at least in the circles that I run in. Of this is another perception and story about Senegal and Mali that the media won't push because, to your point, when I was growing up, the only thing we knew about Africa was when we saw the little kid on the screen with bugs flying around them and them asking for money.
See, I see, I see.
And it wasn't until I went to Ghana and I'm like, wait, there's beaches, like there's nail studios, and like I'm getting my nails done by a black nail tech, and like everyone around here looks like me. And just like I have this picture of like black boys at a waterfall. Growing up, black people didn't even like wasn't even seen in nature, right? And it's like this is their everyday life. Like these black people grow up on this beautiful beach in Ghana, and here we are thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be staying in the hood,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
then to know that at least in America, America's a it ain't quite melted, but there are a lot of groups of people in America. But now you're in Chile where they probably don't see a lot of different people, and even tourists there are probably from other neighboring Latin American countries or Europeans because they find themselves everywhere. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
um, how did you kind of navigate that space? Did you find Black community while you were there? Um, what was those 2 years? Were you there for 2 years? How many years were you in
I was
Chile?
there for 2 years. Yeah, in Chile, Chile.
How was those 2 years?
Just before I go on this one, because it's very interesting what you said about, the fact that you are from the states and your grandfathers are from the states, and I think that this is something also that, well, in France, you have a kind of colorblind narrative that exists. For example, the word race has been erased from the constitution in 2018 because they would say that everyone is a human being and this is how it is, and we go like this way from now on. And the thing is that when you do this, it's a way to say history is going to start from them, and you're priving you're quitting people the possibility to anchor themselves to something that is different from what's happening. And I think that in the states there's the same thing that occurred, that you're going to change your names, because you can't have any anchor to what is Africa. is
Yeah.
something that is very violent, and to know that, for example, in France, it's something that people are trying to uh, to promote even today, is something that is very, very difficult. And to me, it has been a kind of treason,
Yeah. Yeah.
treason, because you know uh, you ain't going to tell me that my ancestor was white with blue
Blonde
eyes and it was
lies.
blonde. No, this lie is not gonna is not going to work on me, and for a lot of people it was this, so yes, we are French. It's something that is related to our papers, but we have much more than that, and you will have to recognize our differences. And this is something that I think was part also of the decision that I made to stop saying that I was from France
Yeah.
and saying that I was from Mali and Senegal. The fact that I was born in France was something that happened. I had also this privilege that I recognize also, but um, this is not on my own identity. And
Yeah.
you have to know that France is much more diverse than what is painted in the
Yeah.
media.
I think this is also, I'll be honest and like share a story. Like growing up, I was just black. Like I had no tie to country. Like I didn't even think about country, right? Like, yes, we celebrated 4th of July. I thought anybody with a flag on, unless it was from the old Navy sales. And the
Mhm.
people who are listening, if you know, they know. Because like Old Navy is a store back in the States, and they would have all of the like $5 t-shirts for 4th of July. But other than that, I was not wearing anything with an American flag on it. We had this impression that if you represented America in that way, unless you're military, you're racist. Like to even have love for your country the way I grew up meant to be racist.
I see.
And we just identified as black, but not one time did we ever own a narrative as a community and a collective that our blackness stemmed from Africa. Like because of the negative stereotypes of what Africa is. And we would go to Egypt, and I'm like, that ain't that ain't
Mhm.
quite right. That's not right either. But like Egypt is in Africa, but it's having this picture painted of kings and queens. They're fairer skin. I remember when I was in elementary school and we had to do a paper on like what is your heritage. And honestly, until like this moment, I never even thought about why that is problematic when you have a whole group of students who don't know, and now we having to make up something because I don't know where my family is from.
Mhm.
And my mom said our family came from Haiti. Never did anybody say, well, how did black people get to Haiti? Through the same slave trade from Africa. But Haiti sounded better than saying we were from Africa or me picking any country in Africa. And I think there's the privilege and the ignorance that comes with being American. And then also you add a layer of being Black American with that same privilege and ignorance. And you end up with these kind of diaspora wars that we have now between the Black communities globally,
I see.
right? And until we can really own the narrative that we are all from Africa and we have all been victimized by white people, and that we have a power if we unite and not continue to use these negative stereotypes that the media has portrayed to divide ourselves and create this hierarchy, like the same one that exists within colorism is the same one that exists within the diaspora. We would never be able to see our power as a people. And that and honestly, if I just, I want to speak power into us one day coming together, but that's the track that we're on, is never being able to see that because there's still such a divide, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this conversation, because for me, it took flying, hours around the world and thousands of dollars to like learn this.
Mhm.
And I never, and the embarrassing that it is, I was 31, 32 before I really understood the magnitude of the diaspora, of the slave trade, of colonization, because I went to Ghana. When I went to Ghana, I'm like, why is white Queen Elizabeth sitting on this wall? Why is there scriptures in this slave castle from the same Bible that I grew up reading? But we're talking about rape, and we're talking about kidnapping, and we're talking about sending people on a long, gruesome, death inducing journey to various parts of the world, not just America. Also, those same people going to other countries, right? Like, I didn't know that there's, just like there's a long lasting history of Black Americans, there's a long history of Black Brits, I'm sure, like Black in Portugal, um, in probably other countries that I have just not learned the history of. And now we're going to erase it, right? And the more I have these conversations, the more I learn about these smaller perspectives, but it's the same story. The same story of oppressed the Black stories, colorism that exists. How do we embed our kids and the next generation into these Western cultures for a better life?
Mhm.
And it makes me think, like, at what point did us just unifying and growing our own not become the better life? Because now you have so many kids, now adults having children, having to struggle through their own identity issues, some not making it to where you made it, right? Still continuing to walk in the way of forgetting where they came from because that's what they knew. It may not be easy, but it's easier because that's the uncomfortableness that they've gotten used to dealing with. And I don't know, it's just like a real life thing. And I think us putting a name to it and painting this picture is very meaningful and helpful.
And it is. It is. No, it is. It is. One thing that I have learned when I was in Chile, in fact, is that really you have white people and you have the others, and we are part of the others. And the only thing that matters is that we are part of the others. So if they can paint us like however they want, they're going to do it because we are the others. And one thing that was very important to me is to say, I am part of the others if you want. Okay, I'm not white. But my experience as a French, as a person from Mali, Senegal, that have lived, in Kenya, in fact, on the three continents that are Europe, America, and also in Africa, is very different from the one that, for example, you have. And I think that it's something very, very important to, make oneself uncomfortable into saying, yes, I am black, but my experience as a black man is different from the one that you have been able to live. The thing is that as we are the others is something that is most of the time hidden,
Mhm.
because it's easier to put someone into a box and to just say these are the others. But I think that this way we're going to find those common, those things that are common between ourselves. The fact that, as you said, we have been oppressed for a lot of years. That we have been pride for, like they quit our part of our history. The fact that we have been also at in some point victimized, but also there are all other things that are very common to to what I have been able to see in different countries. The fact that we have a creativeness that
Mhm.
goes beyond, the imagination that we can find. People in Colombia, black people in Colombia, in France, or in Africa, or in any part of Africa, when you see them, man, they have a kind of
The
coolness.
sauce is
Yeah, they have it. They have it, and this is also part of this thing that we had to resist at some point and to say, this is not the only narrative that I need. That I want to say. I just don't want to say that I'm part of the others. I am someone else, and
yeah,
this I am someone else is something that is also common to us. It's difficult to go through this process, but it's something that is common to us, and that says, yeah, this is who I am. Look how stylish I am. Look how cool I am. Look
the
what kind
joy.
exactly. Look what I am capable to do as a human being, beyond the fact that I am black. I'm a black person, and I think that this, if we start to really gather this creativeness, this joy, this originality that we have, is something
Chris,
that is gonna give us the power that you were taking just before.
I truly believe that deep down, white people, what I give them credit for is having a vision of the future because they knew if we were to ever get together, we will be so lit, we will rule this world.
Yeah.
Said, how do we end this before it gets out of hand? That is truly what I believe.
Exactly.
Like, because if you think about, before we even talk about the things that we've accomplished as a people all around this world, no matter where we are, the fact that you made people leave their village, forced people out of their village, chained them, made them walk for months on very little food, very little water, brought them to a place that they had no idea with hundreds of people piled up on each other, women bleeding on people, men and women pooping on people, like this gruesome thing.
Mhm.
Put them on a boat, sent them somewhere to work, and they survived.
Yeah.
If we did nothing else, we survived. Like, when I like, Ghana was such a life changing experience because you just hear, oh, they kidnapped them, they put them on a boat, and they got to America, and then they had to work, and they were beat or whatever. No, like, it took a year before they maybe even got on a boat to go to whatever country that they were going to. And
Mm.
within that year, they were raped, beaten, starved, naked half the time. They lost so much body weight to where the door that they were able to fit through was so small. And then they got on a boat. It will take forever on a boat right now in modern history. Back in the early 1900s, 1800s, whenever it was, 1800s, and lived, and then started to rebuild and create and have hope again. Like, there is no other group of people on this earth that will be able to do that. And I think it's just something so powerful knowing that no matter where I go in this world, when I see a black person, there's just something coded in our DNA.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter where we're from, how we grew up. Yes, we're going to have some of those characteristics of our home country, but there's just something in us that is different and that we have not taken the time to recognize as a whole. And man, I just think I know that that's what they did, and they did that on purpose because we will be too lit for this world. Like the world would not be able to handle the amount of great. Like I mean, we saw Wakanda, and that's just what a white person and black person came together was able to envision. Like, can
Mhm.
you imagine?
No, no. Yeah, you're right. You're right on this one. You're right on this one.
So I want to switch gears a little bit because we brought up Colombia. Um, let's talk about Ocho de Marzo
Okay,
because I think this is a good transition, especially as we think through how can we come together as the diaspora. Um, so I'll let you kind of talk us through what is the neighborhood, what is the work you're doing there in that community.
perfect. So, just for you to have a little context also on Ocho de Marzo, because I think that this is it's an important part of it. Colombia had a armed conflict for more than 60 years, and this armed conflict affected the countries, the whole country, and specifically like the countryside of Colombia. And in the parts of the Pacific coast, for example, that is called Choco, you have also Urabá, you have Cali, Buenaventura, all those places. You have a lot of black people who are living there and who were displaced because of the armed conflict. And in the 80s, they most of the people who were displaced, they decided to come to Medellin to find a new life, and they did not know where to live. So they started to build houses at the periphery of Medellin. The thing is that they started to build this neighborhood, and directly the M19, that was a armed group that was operating in the country, took the neighborhood as a camp for them to operate in Medellin. So this is something that says a lot of Ocho de Marzo, is that at the beginning, at the origin of the build, the construction of the neighborhood, there is a deep political question out there. So they managed to get those people out from the neighborhood. And what happened is that they started to build once again the neighborhood, because when the M19 was operating, the police and the army was coming and was destroying everything, and they would come over once again and do it again, and so they had really this resilience to build the community. And one thing that was very important in the construction of Ocho de Marzo was the fact that women had a role that was huge in the building of this neighborhood. And in fact, this is why, in fact, it is called Ocho de Marzo, because it is in the to recognize, the date of the international date of recognition of the rights of women. 8 March is something that has been used to show also that they would recognize the work of women in the construction of the neighborhood. So there in the 80s, they started to build the neighborhood. Uh, at the beginning, I have some pictures. I'm going to send it to you.
Okay.
But it was something that was really, really rudimentary. It was you had almost anything. So they had to build the sewage, they had to build the houses, they had to build uh, the um, um, the network of water. They had to bring electricity power to the neighborhood. This was
Without any government help.
and the government took a lot of time to come, because this happened in a lot of peripheries of Medellin, and at this moment the government would say that these are invasions,
Mm,
from the countryside. So as they were not able to manage it, they would just put a stigma, stigmatize it.
mm,
As
mm,
these are people from outside. They're going to destroy our values. You see, there are black people. You see, they don't have the same customs that we have. They are poor people. If we keep on, receiving people like this, you are going to be poor. The same narrative that we have on immigration in a lot of countries, even today. So in the 20s, like in the yeah in 2005, uh, a lot of children that we are working now started to that they were born in the neighborhood. And Ocho de Marzo, during this whole time, from the 80s until 2005, 2007, it was, as they say here, caliente, barrio caliente. Really, you had a lot of people who were,
yeah.
yeah, a hot neighborhood. It was, a lot of people were killed. You had, a lot of armed groups that were operating, drug dealers all over the places. It was very, very difficult. And so during the like 27, 28, the children that we today know were started to be born. And they started to have also another narrative about Ocho de Marzo. They started to really start to invest in the history of the neighborhood. It was a political neighborhood, but people really struggled, really were resilient, and really wanted to have a new life, and what better than the city to have it. So it was something that was important for them. And uh, so they started to invest a little bit more in the neighborhood. And today what we do with the children, because most of them, so they are black children who are born out there. The thing is that they have herited from a lot of from their parents. So, for example, the food that they eat is different. The way that they speak is different. Their behavior is also different. The way that they connect with people is different. The music that they listen to is different. So all those kind of things also was a bit strange for them, because they have like 10 years ago, or even less, they started to be integrated with other
Mm,
kids
mm,
in
mm.
Medellin. So they would see, for example, the differences that they would have with the others. When people would call them, say, oh, negro, ¿qué estás haciendo? Or those kind of things. For them, it was kind of, what are they talking
Yeah,
about here? This is
yeah.
not part of what I'm living in my day-to-day life. So when we started to work, the organization Caravantu decided to go in this specific neighborhood, but not this one only. There are 7 or 8 other neighborhood that have the same dynamics. And the idea was, through short movies, to tell the stories of those people by them. And this was something that is very, very important too. So we started to go to see the social leaders who are there. Most of them, as I said, are women, and to see what we can do with the children, what they can say about their lives. So each year, what we do is to create a short movie that is um, streamed in a international short movie festival, um, in that is broadcast in their territories, and also in Medellin and in other parts of the world, in fact. So this is the idea of what we do in Ocho de Marzo.
So I went to Ocho de Marzo with Chris, and when I think about 2024, that was definitely one of my top five moments.
Mm.
I think one, I am a beginner intermediate in Spanish. So like all I hear is Spanish, but in a tone of like what felt like I was at home. I'm like,
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Like, this is the spice, and the sauce that you don't get in the city center or La Reyes of Medellin. And but what it also reminded me of is my childhood. So growing up, I don't know if I've shared much of this with you, but my mom is had me at an older age, so she grew up during Jim Crow era. She grew up on a plantation because her parents were sharecroppers. Um, and their big move was to move to Baton Rouge, right? Like that was the big city in Louisiana. And we grew up in what as the hood growing up, but then I learned later that I grew up in the hood.
Mm.
And what saved me and what I know played a major part of how I can be sitting in Vietnam today without even dreaming of this life was programs like what you're doing in Ocho de Marzo, where you're exposing them to something greater than the narrative that society has placed on them and giving them the tools that they need, no matter if that's confidence, public speaking, just seeing other kids like them, or adults that are now living and charting different paths than the narrative that the neighborhood may have told them is not possible. And it just made me think of how what for me felt like a very small effort. I spent maybe 4 or 5 hours. I took a bus, you know, spent some time, could definitely be life transformational work for these kids. And it had me thinking of thinking through back to our earlier conversation of what is the work of the diaspora? Like, how do we not only just come together, but set ourselves up and the next generation up at a level that scaled, right, for more success, because we have to do it. Like no one's gonna come, no one's gonna come save us at all, right?
Mm. Mm.
And it's like there are a lot of people that come to Medellin. Palenque and Cartagena is the only place in Colombia on a tourism scale that gets the narrative of Black people in Colombia. Like I knew nothing about Choco, some of the other cities that you mentioned in Colombia until I went to Colombia. To be honest, I didn't know about Palenque until I went to Cartagena,
Mm.
right? Like there's so much that we don't know, but I do know that there's a lot of tourists that come to Medellin that maybe looking to volunteer, give $5, $10. I'm like, you literally had these kids in a room a few hours. We went over some scripts. I was just sitting there in amazement. That's all I did. And played a few games. And, and just like gave them a snack that probably cost what, $10 in total for all the kids in USD, maybe 20. And it sent them along their way. And it's like, I don't like that just shifted my perspective of how there was no overhead costs. There was no this like big startup of this non-profit.
Mm.
Like y'all are already using space in the community, some time, maybe paying the camera crew that came out to do that work. And it's like how do we get involved, which is one thing I want to know, like if anyone wants to donate, can they, how can they, and are you looking for more volunteers or maybe expats that's living in Medellin? What is kind of the goal for the group, and how can people listening or living in Medellin, and if they want to help, what does that look like?
Okay, so before I say this, I'm going to talk about my own experience about it and how I came to to contribute to this because um, well, because of my work, I've been involved also with a political organization here that is called the PCN,
Okay.
Proceso de Comunidades Negras, and is one of this the member of this political party that showed me the way, through Caravantu.
Mm.
She just this person, I was with her talking with her, and she would just tell me, we need people who are from outside the country to show those kids that they can see beyond, this neighborhood. And my first move was this one, to just show up and just show them that it was possible, to be black, to be like them, and to have a different path in life. And this was the first thing that I did. And the more I started to connect with those kids, uh, the feelings that I started to have were uh, strong. The stronger the feeling I had. First, I was relieved because I was seeing kids that in my childhood or in different countries in which I've lived, the same way as you said, they would they would be like me. It's the same. It would be the same thing. I mean, if it wasn't them, it could be me. This is the
Yes.
first thing. And the with this feeling of reliefness, I also started um, to feel that I had to be humble. Because not everything is a success in this neighborhood. You have early pregnancy, you have teenagers of 14, 15 who are falling in drug dealing and drug consumption. Some of them are in detention, houses. And this thing that, as a children, when you have those kind of barriers of growing up in a neighborhood, is something that most of the time we don't dimension it, but it can be so big, that the faith in having a good future is something that can just fade away
Yes.
very, very quickly, very early in life. And so to be humble and to know the privilege that I had was something that also was very important. And the last thing I think that was uh, great is the inspiration of that the kids gave to me. I
Yes.
speak Spanish. I have no problem in speaking Spanish, but their language is something that I had to learn. So because they have a way to connect with you that is very different. And they deal with a lot of courage, and they're intelligent, they have a lot of strength too. And these are things that really inspired me during the whole way. And I think that any people who would be involved in those kind of work would feel something that is very similar. This inspiration from those kids is something that is very, very, very crucial to me. It's something that I think that I've had more, giving than, if I would just be there and
Yeah.
give money. I don't know. So the idea for people who would come and would like to be involved is first to show up.
Yes.
It's important for those kids to know that you are from outside of the neighborhood, and you can be, a scientist, you can be a data analyst, you can be a lawyer, you can work in international cooperation as a black person, you can speak a lot of languages, you can do those kind of things.
Yes.
This just the just this thing, you can do it, is something that gives a lot to those kids. And so we work with through this channel that is Caravantu,
Okay.
um, and the idea is to, once again, to help or to contribute. If you I don't know the right word for it. It would also depend on the way that the people would like to get involved.
Yes.
But the idea is to spend time with them, to learn about them, to listen to them. Because I think that this is the most important thing, to not let the narrative of Medellin, that is, Medellin is Poblado, is Laureles, is party, is drugs, is prostitutes, and you will see only this in Medellin. This narrative is something that has to be broken,
Yes.
because you have a lot of people who are, first of all, suffering from it, and also who are invisibilized, like marginalized, because they are not part of this narrative, and because they want to have another face of to show another face of Medellin. And those kids, for example, are kids who want to show another face of Medellin. So um, you can write to the Instagram channel of Caramantu, for example.
Okay.
That can be the first channel that you get, that in which you are going to see all the activities we perform or we carry out with them. The idea is that all of our Sundays we go there for 3 4 hours, and we do a lot of activities with them, and that goes from how to know some words of English, for example, or how to build a narrative on who you are. We talk about racism, about sexism, about capitalism also. That is something that is important because they are also affected by this kind of things. And one would be very surprised to see how those kids are awake, like they're woke on a lot of subjects. I remember someone once that would come to Medellin in the same narrative of, yeah, Medellin is Poblado, Laureles, and we had a discussion. And we were in a group, and he would say, in Colombia, I feel that people are not involved politically, and
Mm,
because of, and he would justify it because of the situation of poverty in which a lot of people are involved are in. And I remember that my first reaction was to think about those kids. Two
mm,
years ago, one of them, who is now 13 years old, that is to say, he was 11 years old at this moment, Matias, he decided that because of the poor quality of energy that would come, sorry, in the neighborhood, he would
mhm.
write to the governor with his mates, because he knew that this was a channel that he could use,
Yeah.
because of what all of the activities that we did. He just decided to write a letter to say that the quality of the power that is coming to Ocho de Marzo is something that is poor, and that we have to do something about it.
Yeah.
At 11 years old, do you think that someone at 11 years old, I was playing football? I was in other in other in another imagination, another dream. So to say that people in Colombia are not politically involved is something that also we have to shut down. I mean, these persons want to give another narrative. They want to build another dream for their
Yeah.
neighborhoods. And at this age, to see that they can do it at this age is something that is very, very inspiring. So really, I motivate anyone who wants to see what's happening to Ocho de Marzo. And it's not the only neighborhood. This is the thing. I'm talking about one of them, but we have 8 of them, 9 of them. You can go to Moravia, you can go to Limonar. There you will have the same stories.
Wow.
So it's important to build another narrative and the dream that those persons are also building, those children are also building for their neighborhood and for their city, and to put it like to highlight it to
Mm.
people who are coming to Colombia and to Medellin.
Yes, it was just such a beautiful experience. Thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to spend time. Um, I think the other thing that I just thought about was I think and I'm not sure about their school situation, but I also grew up in these very all black environments, and it's a beauty. It's loud. It's fun. There's a lot of just life. But you mentioned some of them are gonna fall to their environment, and I think that is one of the things that really touched me was because I easily could have been, you know, a what we call it a product of my environment or
Yeah.
fall into the stereotype of whatever limiting beliefs were put on me. And it was like at that moment, I'm like, wow, Whitney, like one, you're sitting in Colombia in this room as a traveler who has lost their job and like on a year of exploration because you can afford to do so, right? And learning a new language when this is where you started, right? And now you're like just sitting here allowing someone to see you as a path that they can take. But it also reminded me of I was the one of the larger group that is living this life, right? I am not the norm. A lot of my classmates, did have babies young. A lot of them did finish college, right? But they lived the life that was painted for them, and I can only imagine like what that means. We have an American privilege like that comes with even just living the life that's painted for us versus in a place like Colombia that even on a global scale gets a bad rep. Then there's also the political parties at play in the country itself, right? And then to be like on the bottom of the totem pole of help, of like of communities that they want to help and to have to come out of that, that's a lot. That's a lot for anyone and to know that they're still saying, no, I'm gonna do it because I want more. I know we deserve more. But like also the innocence that you lose at a very young age, at 11. I think that's one thing that last year I finally like looked in the mirror and had to accept was my childhood was taken because in order for me to get here to where I am, I had to be, I wasn't writing letters to the government, but I was definitely confronting the teachers and the principals at my school about what wasn't right and what was wrong. And I wasn't able to like just be a kid, right? Like run and play. I'm like trying to analyze was this prejudice or discriminatory and who I'm gonna go tell and reading the handbook to tell you why you was wrong or why you were right at 11 years old. And like last year was the first like I feel like a big kid, like because I never got that. And that's the unfortunate reality for a lot of Black kids who want to make it out. You do lose some innocence at a very young age. And I think though on Sunday it gives them a time to where they can still play, they can still be a kid and in a comfortable and safe environment. So I applaud you and your team and your efforts. And yeah, I just hope this year I can be able to see the kids at least one Sunday. But I want to wrap up with this one last question. Um, you've taken us around the globe at this point. You are probably one of the few people that I know that has this experience of Blackness in so many contexts. Um, what does it mean to you to be Black?
Mm. Well, I think that, yeah, once again, I think it's something that is, to me, it has been a process. It has been part of a process, and I know that being Black is not only about my color, the color of my skin. This is something that a long time ago I've been able to throw away because when people see me as a Black person, they see me, they see my color, they see my face, they see my nose, the way that my hair is, um, my hair, they see my culture, my history, or my non-history. They see my body, they see my sexuality, they see my position in the political and the economical arena. So there are a lot of things. But to me, be Black is to choose to be Black. To choose to be Black to me is to make sure that I'm conscious about the experience that I'm living. Because uh, and this is the thing, I think that when I started to realize that the dream that has been made by the people who made us into into a race was not the dream that I want to live in my life. uh, I had to understand why they did it. First of all, what is this dream, and what I can do to build my own dream. And my
Mm,
own dream will go through also be with people who are like me, you know. And from being, made into a race, I want to be made into a people.
mm,
And so choose to be black for this purpose, to make sure that the dreams that we have for humanity, the connection that we want to have with people, the experiences also that we want to live, is something that I choose,
mm.
not something that is projected on me and that I have to perform because it is like this that people are going to like me, you know.
Yes,
So being black, like for some years now, it has been a choice for me.
I love that, Chris. I really do. I don't want to add any more because I feel like that is the perfect ending. Like, to be black is something that I choose, and to be conscious of how you show up in every space and to want to be known as a person. That is so beautifully stated. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you for taking the time speaking with us
Thanks to
today.
you. Thanks to you.
And we will have all of the information about some of the history that we spoke about in the description, as well as how, if you're in Medellin, if you want to connect with Ocho de Marzo, and the pages for their social media accounts in the description. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you, Whitney. And once again, you're very, very welcome in Ocho de Marzo and Limonad, in all of those places. They want to see us. They want to see us. So just come.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to end recording now.